Welcome back to Newsmaker Live. We're talking consumer affairs, and these affairs affect every consumer on the island. I'm sure you are one of those. And you might have had your complaints or your qualms or issues with a merchant in the past. And if you have, this is the show to be watching. We have with us Marius Modeste, the PRO of the National Consumers Association, and the president, Mr. Kingsley St. Welcome again, guys. And we're discussing an issue that is sometimes very contentious, that issue of returning merchandise and, you know, getting your money back. We go around St. Lucia, we go to very many merchants, and you see the signs, those cardboard signs or whatever signs that say, no returns, no refunds. You would imagine that they are within their right to have those signs, otherwise someone would have forced them to tear down those signs. What does the law say about returning merchandise that probably you don't want, or you have bought something, you realize, oh, well, I really don't need that. Let me go get my money back.
As I said before the break, we do not have a consumer law in St. Lucia. All we have a common law of contract, that when you make a purchase, there's a contract between you and the seller. So you could only claim under contract law. And under commercial code says that goods must be sold in a merchantable state, meaning that it's fit for the purpose. With the Consumer Protection Act, right, the Act will be defining all those things. The fund and sources of the right will be defining unfair practices, consumer rights, all these different things. So therefore, you have an act that says, what are my rights as a consumer? So you ask me what happens now. As we talk right now, I could only claim under contract. It says, I bought from you, the good is defective, it's faulty, therefore I could claim damages, etc.
And that's the only way we have. Now, with this new act, the proposed act, what are some of the protections that we're trying to implement, that we want to have for our consumers?
Under contract law, between you, the seller, and the buyer. So you and I have to go to court. The act is making provision for a board. So they'll have a board that will regulate and see about transactions between sellers and buyers. The board will have complaints officers. So those persons now in the Ministry of, Department of Consumer Affairs, complaints officers, they will now be empowered to take you before the board. So therefore, when we have those complaints, and then they'll see, well, whether or not consumer is right, because they do have bad consumers as well. As I say, they have scrupulous sellers, they have bad consumers.
Definitely.
So they'll make a determination, take it to the board, and make a determination. And that is what I think most of our poor and vulnerable people want. Because to go to court is expensive. You need a lawyer. But now they will have a board. They can go to the department, and these officers will be empowered to investigate and take it to the first court. Okay, so that is what this act is going to do.
Now, we were talking during the break too about the differences between St. Lucia or the British system and the American system, where it's simply it's stated on your receipt. If I bought a good and I have that original receipt, the product has not been used or it has not been damaged, and you could bring it back in 30 days, then they will take the product. Are we looking to have similar protections in the Act?
Well, as much as what we know now, and you still have to go through the Act, the draft, to see what is covered there. I think in time, as any act or any law that you want to bring in, there will be times in the instance that you will bring it in, you may find there are loopholes in that law. So as we go along, we will find that if there is something that has to come up, it will come up, and then most probably we will deal with it. As far as I know, that section, maybe the president can articulate on it and let you know exactly, because this document is almost it's 124
yes,
pages.
voluminous,
So there are lots of things in there, the benefit of the consumer, as well, that it doesn't take away the rights of the provider of the goods and services.
Right. It has to be. It has to be
It has
balanced.
to be a balance.
It has to be fair. I mean, I know we're discussing the act because, as you mentioned, there is no act at the present, and I know we'll have sometime in the future to discuss the act in more detail. But in terms of the consumer protections and what you have been doing on the ground so far, I mean, in terms of the kinds of complaints that you get all the time at your office, what kinds of complaints are we looking at?
What we do is we use persuasion. I remember.
Because there's no law.
For the time being,
There's always a law. There's always the contract law. Under common law, I could take you to court for breach of contract. That is always there. But to take you to court means I've got to have somebody have means at my fault to do it. So what we do, we call merchants, we call some of the statutory boards, and use persuasion, and we tell them that so and so, and this and so, the person has the bill, etc. Right? And in most cases, the merchants do listen. They understand. I mean, I have not had one I have not been unsuccessful in any of my pleadings. There's been one case I have right now. There's a lady who has a television since last year, December, and then it has to go under repairs from one of the merchants. And it's a long time now, and I keep calling them and they say they're getting the part for the lady. All right? But they have promised to repair the television for the lady. But we've had many successes in calling merchants, and then they do refunds, they do replacements.
And how often do you get complaints? Is it something that happens every day, or people do not recognize the NCA to the point where they see it as a viable agency that they need to, if they have a problem, they need to contact the agency?
The NCA, what happened in the past, the NCA, we had no office. So persons call on the officers, primarily the president, Hubert James, the immediate past president, and Andrew Antoine. And then they give them the personal complaints, so they would probably call the merchants, etc. Since March 11th this year, we've opened our doors in San Jose. And as Marius said earlier, we have the services of 2 volunteers. So we open from 10 to 1 every day. And when I can make it, I am there as well, and I go past 1, right? So that is one of the goals we have, is to open the office, and this year we achieve it, right? So we are actually seeking funds so that instead of having volunteers, because it's hard to get people to volunteer, so I could at least pay office staff. So if we have the place open, I mean, for 8 hours a day, there's much more you can do. But all of that, all this needs money. We need, I mean, one of the, you asked earlier, what are the functions of the NCA? You have to educate the public on the rights. Because many persons don't know the rights. And that is a problem. For example, you asked what happened. Basically, I'll say to you, Clinton, this is what happened, and the good is effective, then that is your right under the law. If we have the act, when the act comes into being, we'll say to you, your rights under the act. So I will tell you your rights. So when your merchant does that, or you get unscrupulous merchant, how you deal with it. So we have a procedure now with the office. We have a complaints form, so persons come in, they have to write a complaint. And always remember, and I want the public to hear this, in the final analysis, it's you who has to go to court? That means that we use even the board from the Act, and the final analysis, if the merchant still says no, it is the court must decide. That is our constitution. And when it comes to court, you, the complainant, must be willing to say, well, yes, I paid for this service, I bought this good and I have my bill, etc. So we have to start educating our consumers that they must have bills, they must know how to read, so therefore they don't make mistakes, unnecessary mistakes. You follow me? You must read the fine print, because if you sign something and there's a fine print that says so and so, right, it is your fault. So therefore you have to educate them.
That the burden of proof is on the consumer and not necessarily on, not on the merchant per se.
Primarily, if you have your bills, etc., then that is the evidence you make the purchase. I mean, if I go for a haircut, that's a service, the barber is giving me a service, so sometimes you don't get bills for those things. If a guy comes to your home and he does your plumbing job for you, that's a service he's providing you.
Yes.
Okay? You might not have a bill, but if you can actually go to court and say, well, I paid him $200 and then the work he did was not good, give me out the service.
Now you have a new office. You have a new office open. I'm sure that costs you money.
Yeah.
To either rent your space or to own that space. Where do you get your money? How do you get funds to run the office?
Well, we get subvention from government, and the past government, they have been very helpful too. And we run the office as much as we can. But the important thing that we always try to drive home to our consumers, that we need the help of members. We must have the membership to enable us to do the necessary things that we need to do. In that case, we are asking, the president has set a target, and we're hoping that we can meet his target to get at least 1,000 members before the end of his term. And we want to work on that. But we ask the public at all times, when we get the opportunity, like tonight, to join the association. Some people ask, what do I get for that? Yes, we might not be able to give you something tangible, but the important thing is that we are there on standby to represent you whenever the need becomes necessary.
And I'm sure that many people will have the need for representation at one point or another. And there are certain cases, recently that I want to bring up. But we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion with the National Consumer Association representatives, President Kingsley St. Hill and PRO Marius Modeste. Stay with us. We'll be right back to take your calls.